Hello, thank you for tuning in. Unrepentant Atheist here. It's my live stream, my weekly live stream, which I do Monday evening, GMT, around about, I don't know, between 10 and 11. Just check on the channel. I usually say when I'm going to do it, about 6 to 8 hours before I do it, because I'm never certain exactly when I'm going to start this, but usually it's Monday evening. So what I'm going to discuss in this live stream, I'm going to be covering Rob's call into the line. He called the previous week and spoke to Forrest and who else was it? Aaron Adair. The call lasted an hour. I was hoping he would call in when Matt is there. Credit to him, he did call in when Matt was actually on the show on Sunday, so I was really pleased about that. There were other things I was not pleased with, and I'll talk about those. So what else am I going to be talking about? Well, Roger Carrier has put out a video, or I believe he's written a book on why he's not a Christian, and he summarizes in 4 points in a video that I've seen why he's not a Christian. I'm going to be talking about that briefly, just his reasons. And let me see. Oh, yes. And the other thing in my title is that there's a Christian that I know who suddenly said to me something like, "It's all made up." I'll come onto that later and discuss it. There are some other things to say. There's some legislation coming into the UK that protesters at abortion clinics can't come within 150 meters of the entrance. So I'll be talking about that. I saw an article on the BBC about it, which I think is quite important. And there was another program that I watched on YouTube about people dying of cancer. One of these is a pastor, so I found that quite interesting, what he felt about it, how he was coping with the knowledge that he was going to die of cancer. I'll see if I can get it all in. I'm going to try and do it all, I don't know, in sort of 1 to 1.5 hours. So we'll just see how it goes. Okay, well, first things first. Now, last week, my live stream, I got quite a bit of flack for the title, quite a bit of criticism for my titling. And I do put a lot of thought into my titles. I actually pride myself on my titles, because even if my channel is not, I don't know, not the most viewed atheist channel, I think that my titles are usually written very well. This one was not liked, so I covered the call and reviewed the call in the live stream last week, where Forrest used a ploy of pretending that he'd converted to theism, and he didn't immediately say, "I'm pretending." He said to, it was Rob he was talking to, yeah, last week. He said, "Okay, I've just had a revelation from a God, and she told me this, and she told me that Islam's not true, and I've just had this revelation literally within the last few minutes, etc." And then eventually he said, "Well, go along with it. Let's play along with it. It's just pretend." Okay, fair enough. So I thought it would be sort of fun to create a headline for my live stream: Forrest Valkai converts live on the line. Now, I put converts to theism in inverted commas. Now, for those of you who have studied punctuation and understand how inverted commas work, they can be used in direct speech, of course, but inverted commas also means that maybe something is not meant to be taken literally, or it can be an indicator of sarcasm or some kind of humor or something like that. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't know this, and I probably should have realized. And I admit that a lot of people came to my channel thinking that Forrest Valkai had really converted to theism. So what can I say? If people are not well educated enough to understand that inverted commas means not to be taken literally, or sarcasm, or, it's like a marker, which means take this with a pinch of salt. This may not be what it purports to be. And I had a lot of people leaving comments on my channel saying, "Oh, it's clickbait. It's this, it's that." I'm never going to come to this channel again. And I knew it was bullshit and all this kind of thing. So, yeah, people left those comments. And I suppose I'm going to have to dumb down my titles a bit and not use sophisticated techniques, rhetorical techniques, or punctuation. Okay, I've got an English degree. I've got a master's in English as well. So, okay, I'll try and dumb it down. Not for you guys who are watching, because I know that you're on my level or even higher. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on my live stream. You wouldn't be taking the trouble to do it. But there are a lot of people out there who need things dumbing down a bit. And yep, you've got to go for the lowest common denominators. So I was probably at fault there. So I had a lot of people visiting my channel and wondering, where is this? But I do admit one thing, that I really should have covered this at the start of the video. Instead, I covered other matters and then I went on to it. So at about the 35-minute mark, I did that. Yeah, I admit that was my fault. I shouldn't have done that. I did actually put it. I did actually put in the video in the description, or I pinned a comment saying the Forrest Valkai material starts at 35 minutes. So yeah, I take some criticism there on board, but I just hope that a lot more people than before now understand what it means when you put something into inverted commas. Okay, well, I hope I'm coming through nice and clear. I've got no comments so far, which is unusual. People usually come in and leave something in the chat. So nobody, I hope the chat is working. And unfortunately, I've got no idea if it's working or not until somebody actually leaves a comment. If for some strange reason the chat is not working, I suppose that I'm just going to have to just keep going. And oh yeah, it's working. Thank you, Michael Bell. Thank you. Obviously, I've said nothing of note yet that's worth commenting on. So I better say something interesting. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my audience, hadn't I? Okay, so let's move on to Tony's call. Not Tony, sorry, Rob. Yeah. So Rob called the previous week and he spoke to Forrest Valkai and Aaron Adair. Okay. And the call lasted an hour. Rob is a Muslim, and the call was a little bit chaotic. I felt that Rob was running the narrative, like he almost felt like he was the host. He was really dominating things, and credit to him. I mean, I thought that all of his arguments were bad, but he presented them in such a way that they sounded a lot better than they really were. And he gave the host a bit of a runaround. And I didn't really think the host did very well. Now, that's not to say that the host did not counter his points with good rebuttals, because they kind of did. But with somebody like Rob, you've got to really, how can I say, you've got to aim for the bullseye. Yeah, that's what it is. So it's like, I mean, if you imagine the bullseye as the target, Forrest was sort of throwing darts around, and it was not landing anywhere near really close enough to the bullseye. And that's where Matt comes in handy, because he can usually see very quickly where the bullseye is, and he goes straight for it. He doesn't mess around. That's why a lot of calls with Matt don't last very long, but they do last a long time with Forrest and other hosts. That's okay. Everybody's got their own style. But I like the bullseye approach. I like trying to go for the most potent point straight away, because after all, if there's a red hot target or a sweet spot or something, it needs to be hit right on point. I was hoping that if Rob did call back, I was hoping Forrest would not be on. Unfortunately, I didn't get that wish. Forrest is a great guy. He means well. I'm sure he's probably a very moral person. He's very intelligent. He's very well educated in what he knows. But I feel sometimes that he goes on a bit too long. And for this kind of format, when you've got a call-in show, you can't afford to hog the airwaves for too long. A call-in show is about letting the callers speak. put their point, respond to it, and then let the caller speak again. If you're going to speak for 5 minutes non-stop, then I don't really think that's good. I listen to a lot of BBC call-in shows. There's one every morning at 9 o'clock on BBC Radio 5. And interestingly, they don't really have any of the problems that we see on the line. The callers do most of the talking, and the host will usually just come in with a question. The caller will talk, and then the host will come in again at the right moment and then invite somebody else to speak, because usually they've got a few people on. And now, of course, you can't really compare BBC call-in show hosts with the line, because you can bet that if somebody's working for the BBC with millions of people listening, then they'll be really well trained in this kind of thing. And I don't see any of the problems happening on the BBC that I see happening on the line. I don't see the hosts talking too much. I don't see problems like what don't I see? We don't really seem to see problems with callers coming on and being obnoxious and all that sort of thing. I think maybe because the screening is so good with the BBC, they just make sure that's not going to happen. And we don't see technical problems either. We don't see clipping and all sorts of other issues that we see on the line. But they're different kinds of organizations. So yeah, Walker 3. Hello, welcome to the chat. Michael Bell is in listener mode. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you're lurking. You're not commenting. That's fine. Yep. So Walker 3 says sometimes people refer to those as scare quotes. Okay, I've not heard that expression before. Okay, so yeah. So Rob called in again, which I was delighted with. I don't know. I feel like throttling Forrest. Forrest had 1 hour with Rob last week. He had a whole hour with him. Why did he feel that when Rob called in again, that he had to hog the airwaves, stop Matt from talking, to the extent that Matt was just sitting there playing chess? And it seems that Forrest decided he wanted another hour with this guy. I was sitting fuming. I really wanted to hear Matt, because near the beginning of the call, Matt said something like, "Okay, Rob, I've got a question for you." And then Forrest suddenly jumped in, and somehow that question never came. And then Forrest hogged things for about 20 minutes non-stop. Matt said, "Okay, Forrest, I'll just let you get on with it." And then he just started playing chess or doing something. Eventually, he noticed something and he came back in. And I noticed that Matt, let's have a look. I've made a note of the timestamp here. Yeah, 2:02:30. Right, I've written down here, Matt puts down Forrest. Yeah, I've noticed this before, because Matt said, "Okay, look, I was ready to get into this with the caller right off the bat, but I wasn't able to do that." He said words to that effect, and I think that was a bit of a criticism on Forrest, because Forrest already had an hour with this guy. What the hell is he doing? Hasn't he got any common sense? That's what amazes me with some people, that they've got that level of intelligence that Forrest has got, that he can explain the theory of evolution and lots of other things really clearly, but he hasn't got the common sense when to shut up and let somebody else talk. It's absolutely unbelievable. And as a host, as a co-host, he should have that sense that he's already been on for an hour, and he didn't really do that well. Maybe he thought, "Oh, I want to have another crack at this guy. I want to have a second bite at the cherry, because I acknowledge it didn't really go well last week. So yeah, let me have another go. And Matt, you can wait. Maybe he'll phone in a third time." Oh God, I found it really frustrating. But I thought, well, I was going to switch off. I thought, I've got to listen to the whole of this call, and it went on for a long, long time before finally Matt was able to come in. However, I will say one thing. I want to give, I mean, Forrest is like a mixture of sort of good and bad. And he did ask one really good question, which I should have asked it near the beginning, not halfway through the call. And the question he asked, because Rob was saying, well, empiricism isn't everything, and we can confirm things with non-empirical methods. Brilliant. Okay, absolutely brilliant. And Forrest asked exactly the question I wanted to ask him. I wanted him to ask. And he asked, um, name me a non-empirical method which you can use to confirm some of the claims you're making. I thought that was a really, really good question. And he tried to dodge it at first. He dodged it, and Forrest brought him back in. I think Matt also said, no, answer the question. Because he started doing a Jordan Peterson. It depends on what you mean by this. It depends on what you mean by that. And then he answered saying something to the effect, he started sort of waddling the waters, and then he started talking about, well, if it's revealed, if it's revelation, if a prophet reveals it, or if it's revealed in a holy text, this is a non-empirical method for determining if the claim is true or not, the religious claims are true or not. So that's what he went to. And then he started talking about, that if Matt was saying, how do you know it's a real prophet, and how do you know that's really the message from God? And he said, I think he said something to the effect that it would only count as revelation if the messenger was a prophet. And let me see if I can get this right. Yeah, if it comes from a messenger, then it's got to be accepted as a revelation, something to that extent. And I think Matt said, well, imagine we've got two people arriving. One is a false messenger and the other one's a true messenger. How do we know which one is a true messenger? And that was a very good question. And he couldn't really answer that. He tried to get off onto something else. But that's the sort of question I like from Matt. How do we know when something is real revelation? Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. How do we know when something's real revelation, and how do we know when it's, because you've only got to say to a theist, is there such a thing as false revelation? And we know they're going to say yes, because there's not only revelation in their own religion, there's revelation in other religions. So if they say no, all revelations are true, then you'd have to say, well, in that case, you're a Christian. You're saying that Islamic revelation is true, and Islamic revelation says Jesus is just a human being, not divine at all. So no, that can't be right. There must be false revelation and true revelation. Okay, assuming there's a God. And then how do you know which one is true? How do you know which one is false? It's brilliant. I think all you guys should remember that. If anybody ever says, it's revelation, if a Christian says to me it's revelation, I say, how do you know if it's true or false revelation? And he might say, well, there's no false revelation. I'll say, well, okay, then Islam must be true because they've got revelation true. Oh, yes, there is false revelation. No, it's a really good, I think it's a really good comeback for that. Let me just quickly check on your comments. Grumpy Librarian, welcome. I don't think I've seen you on my live stream before, but welcome. No worse than the Christian rule. I see a lot of that. It must conform to scripture. Oh, yes, okay. And where did the revelation come from to write the scripture? Yeah, quite. Okay, let me just look at Daniel's comment. It goes on to what I was talking about before about Forrest doing a false conversion. Let me just read your comment out, Daniel. When I saw the title about Forrest converting to Christianity in quotes, I knew that it was not to be taken literally, especially as someone who has seen. Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, and some people did say about that they knew that there's no way that Forrest is going to convert. Yeah, of course, absolutely. But still, I did get a lot of criticism. Okay, back to Rob's call. Yeah, so I was not happy. And Grumpy Librarian, I don't know whether you saw the call, Rob's call, but I was not happy with Forrest's input because he had an hour with Rob last week. I'm furious about it because I don't think they did a good job with Rob last week. I think they let him get away with far too much. And they sent him away quite happy because he kind of ran circles around them in many ways, even though his arguments were absolutely terrible. And he came back. Credit to Rob for coming back and facing Matt. Credit to him. Yeah, absolutely. because we know that Matt is going to be the one to face. If you think you're a confident Christian and that you can run circles around atheists, you might call in when somebody like, I don't know, who should we say? I don't know. I mean, who's a weak host? Say Jim Barrows or somebody like that, or who else? I mean, who else would be a weak host? Um, I don't know. Well, I think that maybe some people might think that Forrest is a weak host in some ways, although I suppose he's not. I suppose he's sort of regarded as a strong host. But in any case, you might want to avoid Matt if you're an arrogant Christian and you want to try and come onto the line with a gotcha moment and then run away. Matt isn't the one to do that with, because usually he'll mute you and shut you down before you get a chance to run away. So credit to Rob for phoning in when Matt was there. No credit to Rob for his rubbish arguments at all. And we saw him once again being dishonest, dodging, dancing, avoiding answering questions. And luckily, Matt was able to get in with a few words eventually after about half an hour. And let's have a look what happened exactly. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, so Forrest asked what is non-empirical evidence? And then he was floundering a bit. Rob was floundering a bit. That was a good question. So 10 on 10 to Forrest for that question. I really like that question. And I'll remember. You see, I like to keep my commentary balanced. So I will be critical on somebody, but Forrest did really come up with a very good question there. Can't deny that. I was just frustrated that he didn't let Matt get in sooner, because I think the call would have lasted 10, 15 minutes. Had Matt handled it, it would have lasted 10, 15 minutes, because as I said, Matt usually goes for the bullseye, and Forrest and other hosts, they usually like to build up to it. You know, they start weak and they gradually get stronger in theory. But I think going for the bullseye straight away with somebody like Rob is not a bad thing. With other theists, you can take a softly approach and take them through a sort of epistemological, I don't know, what shall we say? Not course, but sort of show them epistemologically how to get to where you are or where they're going wrong, maybe a bit at a time, very softly, and eventually get to the main point and hopefully end the call on a good note. So, yeah. Now, this was really interesting because Matt asked 2 minutes 08. I've written down the timestamp because I'm going to record this call and review it. So Matt, and react to it. So Matt wrote down, Matt said about the moon, he said to Rob, did Muhammad, is it Muhammad or Allah? Did Muhammad split the moon? Because that's what it says in one of the surahs in the Quran. And he said, well, yes, he did. And then Matt, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but Rob said, how do you know the moon exists? Yeah. So the thing was about the moon. Yeah, he said, how do you know the moon is even real? Do you know that the moon exists? And Matt said, well, yes, of course. And what do you mean, how do we know the moon exists? We've been to the moon, we can see it. We can do experiments. The moon has got a gravitational pull, and obviously it affects the tides, leaves its shadow on the earth, and there are so many different ways that you can verify that the moon is real. And then Rob came back with this bullshit that you can't really know anything unless God, unless your worldview includes a God, you can't really know anything anyway with any certainty. And Matt said, well, we don't need to be certain. And then Matt said, what do you mean? Is the moon real? In the Quran, it says that Muhammad split the moon. Did Muhammad split the moon? So if it's saying that in the Quran, then I'm presuming that you believe that the moon is real. Well, of course, the theist will always say, well, yes, but I've got God and you haven't. So I've got God who is guaranteeing that my knowledge is true and certain. So with certainty, thanks to God, I can claim, I can say, I know that the moon exists, but you atheists, you can't. You haven't got a God. You got nothing to ground your knowledge in. So I don't want to get into that, but yeah, that's where he's coming from, and that's where a lot of theists come from. You can't know anything unless there's a God. Okay, let me just look at your comments about the moon, Grumpy Librarian. There's a reflector we placed on the moon we can use to measure the speed of light, as well as verify it's there. Okay, well, yeah. Okay, Michael Bell, a good telescope and a night of where one can see our lunar trash. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. But yeah, okay. It's a point of epistemology, and if your worldview is such that epistemologically you can only have knowledge if there's a God, then you could turn around and say, well, yeah, I can have knowledge, but you can't. You can't know that the moon is real because you haven't got a God. You haven't got a firm grounding for your epistemology. None of your claims have got any grounding to them. You can't have any beliefs. You can't have any knowledge. Yeah, okay. Well, the thing I always say about that is, till you've proven to me that your God is real and how exactly your God would be a grounding for knowledge, can't just claim that. You have to actually have to demonstrate what are the mechanics behind it and why it would make a difference. We're both in the same boat. Unless you can prove to me that your God is real, neither of us have got a grounding. Your grounding is a theoretical grounding, and it remains theoretical or hypothetical until you can actually prove that your God exists. That's the whole point with presuppositionalism. It's all hypothetical. Okay, so where did it go? Yeah, so it ended. Now, there's one good thing, not a good thing. I don't mean that sort of literally. There's one fortunate thing with countering Muslims, because they will come with, oh, there are so many scientific truths in the Quran that they couldn't have known about unless there's a real God behind it. And, there are prophecies in the Quran which have come to pass. The Quran is written in such a way that no human being could have done it unless divinely inspired, etc., etc. Well, you can cut through all that, and there's a go-to, what can I say? There's a go-to silver bullet for any atheist when it comes to Islam. And you know what that is? And Matt used it today, and I think he was justified in using it. That is that Muhammad married a very young girl and consummated the marriage when she was well underage. This is the go-to silver bullet for any atheist. And if you find yourself experiencing dishonesty and all these stupid arguments from Muslims about science and all these other things, you can cut straight through that, straight to Muhammad and the fact that he married Aisha, a girl under 10 years old. You can go straight to the pedophile. Muhammad was a pedophile. Your prophet was a pedophile. Let that sink in. He married a girl under 10 years old. He's immoral and a pedophile. End of story. End of Islam. Repugnant, vile religion that it is. And then, which is more or less how Matt finished off. It was actually quite a good end to the call. So I'm going to be, and I thought it would go that way with Matt. I've realized it would go that way, that it would end up that his smugness, Rob's smugness, would be so unbearable that Matt would end up calling Muhammad a pedophile and then just hanging up on Rob. And I should have predicted that up front on here rather than telling you after the fact. So it's a prophecy that doesn't really count for anything. But yeah, I kind of had a feeling that it might end that way. So it sort of ended a lot better than it started, but I was still annoyed with Forrest that he wasted so much time. So I think this could have been wrapped up in 15 minutes if Matt had handled it. Okay, let me just look at Grumpy Librarian's comment about the moon. I don't need to prove the moon is real in base reality. I can demonstrate that it exists in the reality we share. Whether it's there in the real reality is irrelevant, as I can't explore real reality. Well, yeah, I've always thought about this, that with, yeah, I mean, uh, it's a difficult one because, in a way, I suppose we're agreeing on a shared reality. We're agreeing that we've got a shared reality, and we're not trying to derail a conversation by introducing the philosophical point that what we experience may not actually be real, that there may be a super reality. Because if we're going to posit that, then we can't really talk about anything. We've got to have the presupposition in order to have an argument or a discussion that we have a shared reality. And when people come and say, well, my reality is different from yours because I believe in a God and you don't, then that's a problem. It's a big problem. Okay, so that was the only call that I really found interesting on the line. Unfortunately, this morning, I usually look forward to starting my work on a Monday morning and listening to the line. It used to be that Matt was on every time on a Sunday night. Now he's not always on. So, but unfortunately, because the election is coming up in America, or because the election is ongoing, I forgot actually that in Great Britain, when we have an election, you get one day on which to vote. But I understand that in the American presidential election, you've got a whole week. Is that the case? Okay, I didn't realize that. I know it now. Yeah, so that was my ignorance, but my ignorance is cured, apparently. I didn't realize that that is the case. So in Britain, you've got one day to vote. Yeah. Okay, Grumpy Librarian. Yeah, it depends on the state, really. Okay. I didn't realize that was the case because it seems to be dragging on. But I must say, just briefly on that, I do expect Trump to win. I do think he's going to win, and that should be kind of amusing. But I understand that for other people, it will be a horror. I mean, not that I'm supporting either of the candidates, really, because I don't know enough about American politics to have a preference one way or the other. So, oh yeah, just one thing. Somebody did call in and say that they're not intending to vote because what was the reason? They didn't like any of the candidates, so they're not going to vote. And I think Matt didn't like that, and he said that, well, so if things start going horribly wrong and Trump starts depriving you of your rights and doing this, that, and the other, you could have done something and you didn't. You've got a moral right to vote. You've got a moral imperative obligation to vote. So, yeah, I think Matt was sort of quite angry about that. A lot of people don't vote in the UK. The turnout at the last election was about 70%, so 30% of adults don't vote. That's down to a lot of apathy, other reasons. Some people just can't be bothered, or if they think the election's a foregone conclusion, they don't bother voting. I tend to vote because, I don't know, I somehow just think that because we live in a democracy, if we don't all take our opportunity to have our say, if we all did that, we wouldn't have a democracy. So I know that we won't all do that. And there was that quote from Catch 22, which you might remember, where I think Yossarian said, what did he say? He said that, I can't remember. I think he said something like, I don't know, I'm going to sham sickness and not fly any more missions. Yeah, something to that effect. And Doc Denica said, what if everybody did that? And Yossarian said, then I'd be a damn fool to do anything else. I must go back and read that book. Okay. I don't know if I think I've got the quote right there, more or less. But yeah, no, but no, I don't take that point of view with voting. I think that I'm not saying other people should vote, but I always vote, even if I think that it's a foregone conclusion. I still vote. Okay, right. Now I need to get my mobile phone out because you know I don't think people realize. People see that my channel, okay, more than half of the videos I do are response videos, are reaction videos to third-party content on the line, for example. Yeah. Okay. Um, I get comments all the time. People saying that I'm lazy, I should make my own content, and you're plagiarizing. I'm not visiting this channel again, etc., etc. Yeah. So somebody, uh, a fellow atheist with a channel, left a comment on my channel, and I'll just read it out to you and my reply on this. Okay. So he says, this guy's called the Curious Atheist 411. And if you're watching Curious Atheist 411, you can join in the chat because I won't hold it against you that you've left this critical comment. So he says, I have become very selective with my viewing atheist channels. Okay, good. I think that's a good idea. Everybody should be selective when viewing channels. Of course they should. I've unsubscribed to all atheist channels who promote any political agenda. Okay, well, that's your right. I mean, I watched The Line. And I still think that it's a good call-in show, even though there is an agenda there going beyond atheist issues. So that doesn't worry me too much because I can always not watch the call-in shows on The Line that focus on politics, for example. So he also doesn't like it when people are wearing slogan hats or directly telling me who to vote for. Okay, I get that. And I don't watch atheist channels that simply take other atheist content and react to it. That's the lazy way to create what ends up being lame YouTube content. I select viewing on titles and thumbnails, not channels. Okay, so I went to look at the Curious Atheist 411. I went to look at his channel. He's got about 2,000 subscribers, so less than me. He hasn't got that many videos. He's only got about 50 videos. And I noticed that two of his videos, one of them has got a remarkable 120,000 views. And then there's another one with 20,000 views. And then the rest of them have got the kind of viewing figures that mine have got. So like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 views. But he's got 2,000 subscribers. And I think nearly all of those came from two big videos that he did. Now, the two big videos that he did, one of them is on Ricky Gervais. He's reacting to Ricky Gervais and what Ricky Gervais has got to say about theism. And on the other one, he's reacting to George Carlin and what he's got to say. He actually has got a recording of George Carlin and he's got a recording of Ricky Gervais and he's reacting to them. You get that? Yeah? Okay. So he got two lucky videos where he got, like 120,000 views on one of them, which is absolutely staggering. My biggest video is not more than about 25,000 views. And my 120,000 views on that video, I mean, you can just hit lucky with the algorithm, but most of his videos have got just a couple of thousand views each, similar to me. Okay, so here's my response to him saying that my content's lazy because I use third-party content. I can assure you it is not lazy at all. It takes a lot of time choosing clips, editing them, etc., and recording my reaction and commentary. I watch a call several times before reacting to it. I have many fans who enjoy my take on callers and hosts. it is much easier just to take calls and have exchanges with theists. Well, of course it is, because you just sit there, a call comes in, you respond to it, and then your job is done. You don't have to do any editing, watching something time and time again, or watching a 3-hour call-in show. Okay, let me continue. Right. Okay, check out the rest of my channel. I also do content which is just me, a weekly live stream, for example, and I review debates using only my own content. So my channel is not simply taking other atheist content and reacting to it. And then I go on. I find it bizarre that you criticize me for commenting on a call-in show using content which is not my own, when your 2 most viewed videos both use third-party content which you are reacting to. This is the Gervais and Carlin videos. Instead of rubbishing a fellow activist, perhaps you should think about trying to form alliances. A little friendship can go a long way. Okay, now he hasn't replied yet. He may well reply and say, well, I wasn't really, I didn't specifically say you. I just said I find it lazy when YouTubers use third-party content. But no, it's not easy. It really isn't. I would much rather just make a video and make a few bullet points and talk around it than do call-ins, because call-ins are really time-consuming for me to do. And the reason that I do them is because there's nobody really else on YouTube doing this kind of thing. And I enjoy doing it. And I get good viewing out of it. And I also think I do it okay. I don't think it's, even if I do say so myself, I think that it can be quite interesting for people from the feedback that I've had to watch me reacting and commenting, and maybe providing them with my insight, which might inform their insight. And then, of course, there are the comments that come in, and then that makes me think about whether my take was correct. So I think it's a constructive thing. And this particular atheist, yeah, he's entitled to his view, but I would welcome other atheists who've got YouTube channels coming to me and saying, let's collaborate on something. I would even welcome Christians with channels. This is the thing. I've had Christians challenging me to come on and debate me on my own channel. And these are Christians that haven't got any channels. All they've got is like a channel with 1 subscriber, and they want to debate me. And my position is that if there's a Christian or a theist out there with their own channel that has got, say, at least a few thousand subscribers, then I'd be glad to do a joint project, a discussion, or whatever. But if there are non-YouTubers out there, people with hardly any subscribers who want to debate me, no, it's not going to happen. You've got to bring something to me. You've got to have an audience, and I'll share my audience with you. That's how it works. If you haven't got a channel, then it's no deal. So, okay. Yeah. What else? Okay, but obviously, yeah, of course I get criticism, and that's okay. Every YouTuber gets criticism. And as I've said to many people who've left critical comments, not every YouTuber likes every YouTube video. That's just the way it goes. So I don't expect everybody to like my videos. So leaving a comment on my channel and saying, oh, I didn't like your video, you talk too much. I mean, okay. Well, thanks for the comment, but it's not really, some people think I've talked too much. Others think I talk just about the right amount. Others think I don't talk enough. So that's how it goes. Thanks for your comment. Oh, right, Michael Bell, you're subscribed. I've not really had a good, I just briefly looked at his channel. I'm not criticizing his channel at all, because, it looks fairly sound. It looks like he's put effort into his videos. So I'm just surprised that he landed on my channel and didn't really think through his comment, really. And I'm surprised that as a YouTuber, he doesn't understand how much trouble it takes to actually do a YouTube video, particularly if you're embedding other people's comment in your video and then commenting on it. It is time consuming, and believe me, for the money I make out of a video, it's not worth doing it for the money. I mean, yeah, obviously I like the fact that I make a bit of money out of it, and I'm not really too sure what my attitude would be if YouTube suddenly took away my monetization. I don't know. I would possibly make fewer videos, but it is obviously it's like my hobby, and I get a bit of money for it, but I enjoy doing it, so that's why I do it. Really, I got to tell you the truth that 2 months ago my financial situation changed. Well, more than that. When was it? September. Yeah, a few months ago, my financial situation changed because I'm divorced, and as part of my divorce settlement, I was paying out a very significant amount of money to my ex-wife. Well, that period of time came to an end in September, and I suddenly found myself with this comparatively large extra sum of money, which absolutely dwarfs the amount of money that I make on YouTube. And I had this moment where I thought, oh my God, because the money that I make out of YouTube, when I was paying out that money to my ex-wife, and it was very generous, um, the money I made out of YouTube was more significant to me, and I kind of looked forward to seeing it in my bank account. But now that I'm getting to keep all the money I make, which is way in excess of what I spend, because I live very modestly. I'm a tight son of a bitch when it comes to I don't know. I don't eat out in restaurants. Um, I don't often buy takeaway food. Um, I mean, when I do, if I'm with my girlfriend, for example, we will usually share one portion between the two of us. I mean, which is, by the way, usually easily enough. I am really tight with money, and I live in a fairly basic accommodation. I try to keep costs down because I'm thinking about my old age. I'm 60 and I'm trying to save up money sort of for a rainy day. But having said that, even before then, in my younger days, I was tight with money even then. So that's just how I am. And yeah, I don't donate to charities, and I don't give to beggars. I suppose that makes me a bad person, doesn't it? The fact that I don't donate, I don't send my money to war-torn regions that I see advertising on YouTube. I see poor children dying, starving, looking like skeletons. I see a lot of content on YouTube, a lot of advertising, asking for money. I I have people in the streets begging me to donate to, I don't know, children's charities and animal welfare charities and all sorts of things. And I don't donate a single penny. I never give money to any charity, and I never give money to any beggar. There are beggars here where I live, and I never give them money. Other people do, but I don't. That makes me a bad person, doesn't it? Right? That I don't donate money to charities. I keep it to myself, and I don't feel bad about it. If you want, call me a bad person for that. So, yeah, there we are. I'm an atheist, and I don't donate. I suppose a lot of Christians out there would say, well, if I converted to Christianity, if I believed in Jesus, then I would have become a better person. I would have become a charitable person. Well, I suppose so, but I'm very unlikely to convert to Christianity. Okay. Um, right. So let me move on. Yeah, there's another. Okay. So I watched a program today. I watched a film today on YouTube while I was working about, this is a bizarre one. I don't know what you're going to think of me when I tell you this. It was about people who were dying of cancer. There was a real live show made, and it's an American program. It was made back in the 80s, and they followed, I don't know, 4 families, all of whom had somebody dying of cancer, right? Okay. And there were 2 stories that stuck out to me. One was a fairly youngish couple with 2 sons. The husband, poor chap, he's only like 28 years old, was dying of cancer. Okay. His wife was very stressed out by this. They're bringing up 2 sons, they're like 8, 9 years old. And his wife, it's odd this, but his wife wanted him to die sooner rather than later because he was on chemotherapy, and she actually said that she was praying that the chemo wouldn't work. Well, I don't know. I'm possibly going to do a reaction video on this. Yeah, she was praying that the chemo wouldn't work. I mean, where have you ever heard that? You hear about Christians praying for it to work, don't you? But you never hear about them praying that it's not going to work. But I think that she knew that he was dying. He's terminal. He is going to die. And there's like this cloud hanging over them. So she wanted it to happen so she could then get on with her life. And I could kind of see where she was coming from. But then again, to say it sounded to me like it was in really bad taste that she was praying for the chemo not to work. I shouldn't be laughing about this. Okay, excuse me. Okay, right. Yeah, so there was another one that interested me. A pastor, a black evangelical pastor in the Bible Belt in America. He's about sort of mid-50s, and he's dying of cancer. He's got his wife with him. He's got his son with him, and you see him going into the congregation, and he's doing a service. Halfway through the service, I mean, look, you know what you know the kind of thing I mean. He's got his arms on the air saying hallelujah, and then he'll say something that, you know, I don't know, praise the Lord, and then the audience will say praise him or something like that. You know what kind of style that is, evangelical sort of style. A lot of audience participation, all black, no whites at all. So, yeah, I was wondering what he would say to his congregation about the fact that he's dying of cancer. And he did address it halfway through. He said, a lot of people have asked me how I deal with this cancer thing. And he said, well, Jesus in my life a long time ago gave me a hymn. And then he starts singing this hymn. I can't remember what the hymn is like. I mean, I can't remember the words. I couldn't make out the words the way he was singing it, and I'm not sure what the hymn was. But he sang it very movingly, and they all sang it with him. And that was his response to the cancer that he's got, is just referring to this hymn that he thinks Jesus gave to him. And what can I say? It looks like he's not asking Jesus, why me? Why are you doing this? Why me of all people? I'm a pastor. Keep me alive. My congregation need me. He doesn't ask that question. He just kind of accepts it. And there was something in this hymn that maybe made it easier for him to accept that he's going to die and that he's got cancer. And then later on, there's film of him in the car. He's in a car and he's saying that sometimes things happen for a reason, and that he's been living a very full but maybe too fast life and not slowing down enough to appreciate the beauty in creation. And that finally now he's given up being a pastor. Now that was the last service he gave. Now he can finally relax and enjoy life. And maybe the cancer was God's way of slowing him down. So he was rationalizing it like that. And obviously, shortly after that, he died. So Yeah, he may have slowed down, but he didn't really get much of a chance to enjoy the slowdown. Okay. Oh yeah, the abortion clinic. Let me just get this article. Unfortunately, I've got to use my mobile phone to do it. I would need two PCs next to me because I can't live stream and look up something on the internet at the same time. It will muck up the live stream, and then we don't want that, do we? um, okay, let me just see if I can find it. Here we are. Because we hear a lot from Americans about how there's no separation of church and state in in Britain. And then on the other hand, we see all the problems in America with abortion and everything. So let me just have a look at this article that I've got on the BBC. So it's Emma Barnett. She's a BBC journalist, and she says, I spent a day at abortion clinic ahead of protest ban. And she's saying that, okay, so she's standing outside an abortion clinic in Britain, and there are Christians standing very close to the entrance, and a lot of them are holding crosses with rosary beads, right? Right, men and women. And they're trying to say things to women who are going in to receive treatment. Yeah. So let's have a look. On Thursday, that was last Thursday, a new law comes in making it illegal to influence, harass, or provoke anyone using or administering pregnancy termination services within a 150 meters, that's 492 feet for you Americans, radius of an abortion clinic in England and Wales. So 150 meters is quite a long way. I think that's a really good law. I don't know whether you've got anything like this in America, but you should have. You absolutely should have this, because it's outrageous that women who are traumatized, you're going to be traumatized as a woman if you're having an abortion. You just are, no matter what the reason for that abortion is. You're going to be traumatized because of what's going to happen to your body when a child or a fetus is taken out of you. I understand it's a very, very unpleasant, invasive process, and you're going to be traumatized. And even if you've got pregnant simply because you ignored contraception and you took the risk, you're still going to feel traumatized. And shame on those Christians who are saying, well, you should have thought about that before you did it. So women should not be traumatized for whatever reason if they've decided that they're going to have a termination. They should not be faced with Christians standing outside of abortion clinics, holding rosaries, holding crosses, holding slogans saying "Do not murder," murder is wrong, etc. So I'm really pleased that in Britain, finally, this has been tackled, because this problem has been known about for years. In some cases, it's Americans, Christian zealots, who are coming over here and standing outside British abortion clinics. Finally, we've got some legal protection for these women. Yeah, they're called abortion buffer zones. Abortion buffer zones have long been campaigned for by some and fought against by others. Those who break this new law will face an unlimited fine. So think about that. They could be fined £1 million, depending, obviously, or less than that, or more than that. It's unlimited. I would think this will be a very good deterrent for it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this reporter, she challenged some of these people. Let me just read out what she says. I challenge him. She's talking about one of these guys holding a rosary. I challenge him on instances in which women have become pregnant as a result of rape. He says these abortions can lead to regret, and that instead, in quotes, we need to weep with the victim and be empathetic. Terminations can be traumatic, he tells me. Well, okay. And then she asks, when I ask how he can know this as a man, he says there is research on the topic though he doesn't cite a specific paper. He says, you don't need to be of a certain sex to know about the other sex. Okay, well, I absolutely agree with him. Terminations can be traumatic. Of course, a termination is traumatic for any woman. I mean, look, I've been to the dentist and had a filling. That's traumatic. And believe me, I'm sure that having a termination for a woman is traumatic. For every single woman, a termination would be traumatic. But that doesn't mean to say that going through with a pregnancy when you've been raped is going to be less traumatic than the trauma endured as a result of having a termination. And women have got to make that choice. What is going to be worse, the trauma of going through with a pregnancy or the trauma of the termination? So he doesn't really, that's not something that he addresses. He says, oh, we should just weep with the victim and pray and be empathetic. Yeah, well, that's not really addressing the situation that the woman is in, particularly if she's been raped, or in another circumstance where she's had unprotected sex and she feels traumatized by the prospect of bringing up a child on her own, doesn't feel that she can do it. And again, that might be a bigger trauma for her than the trauma of having a termination. And the whole point is the woman should have the right to choose. That's my view. And unless you're a Christian that believes every sperm is sacred, every fetus is sacred, then obviously, by and large, I would like to think that most secular people will take the view that women should have that choice. Okay, well, I don't tend to get into these issues outside of questions of whether or not God exists or not, but this is actually something I feel fairly strongly about, that women should have the choice. I'm actually a bit of a feminist, oddly enough. I read Sexual Politics by Kate Millett when I was at university, and it just knocked me over. And I kind of became a feminist overnight as a result of it. There's a brilliant chapter in there about how religion has suppressed women. And really, let's face it, all the religions out there were invented by men for men to rule over women. Let's face it. That's what it's about in Islam. And we see in Islamic society women being suppressed so that they can't get their own independence and earn their own money. And they've got to be traded around like property from one family to another. Typically, a young girl being traded to another family so that she can marry maybe a man who is in his 40s or 50s, and she's maybe only 18 or 19 or even younger than that. So, yeah, there's still a lot to fight for with women's rights. And I mean, I'm not an activist, but I'm certainly very sympathetic to women's rights and have been for a long, long time. And that's why people, Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, frustrate me, because I see them as feeding the or stoking all the rage of incels, disgruntled young men, and young men in general who are looking for strong role models, and they see people like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate as strong role models, and unfortunately, they're misogynistic. They hate women based on what I've heard them say, and based also on I know one or two people who are kind of anti-women, and they're always quoting Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. So that's one of the worrying things about the internet, that we've got probably more people have got more access to that kind of poisonous propaganda and worldview. But on the other hand, we've got many activists and channels fighting against that. But I have to say that it kind of isn't looking good. The opposition seem to be winning by the numbers. You look at how many followers Jordan Peterson's got, and you compare that with, say, Matt Dillahunty or He's got millions and millions of subscribers and followers. He's admired. So is Andrew Tate. He's also admired. He's got people quoting him. Okay, have I got anything else to say? Let's have a look. Oh yes, Richard Carrier. Richard Carrier. This would probably be my last. Is there anything else? No. Okay, yeah, Richard Carrier. So I think he's written a book, Why I'm Not a Christian. Bertrand Russell also wrote a book, Why I'm Not a Christian. So Richard Carrier, I watched his video, or a video that somebody had sort of put together, and he gives 4 reasons why he doesn't believe in a God. God is silent, God is inert, wrong evidence, and wrong universe. So watch the video, see if I can recall some of it. So we all know about God is silent, yeah. Divine hiddenness. Why is God silent? Look, we seem to live in a universe that is consistent with there being no God. And I say that, and I think Richard Carrier says that as well, because in a universe with a God, an all-powerful, omniscient, a triomni God, a God who's supposed to be everywhere, you would expect there to be some kind of sound or sight from God, something that could be seen by everybody. And yet, apart from claims that can never be verified of personal experiences, I don't know, yeah, Jesus walks with me, that kind of thing. Apart from those claims, there don't really seem to be any sight or nor sound of God. God seems to be invisible perpetually, and God seems to be perpetually silent. This is entirely consistent with a universe in which no God exists. Yep. So I think that point is fairly obvious. So the next one, God is inert. So God doesn't seem to do anything. Again, where is the evidence that God has ever done anything ever? Outside of so-called divine revelation, outside of scripture, and none of these things can be confirmed. Where can we confirm that God has done anything at all? Okay, I know that there are people who claim God has done things. Some people say, I see God's work all the time. Of course, we know they're cherry picking. But God, the claims that we see, healings, mainly healings, near-death experiences, none of these can be confirmed. The healings, as Richard Carrier says, it's correlation. People are mistaking correlation for causation. And yeah, we see people calling in to the line all the time. The healing stories just keep coming, don't they? Yeah, my dad had cancer. I prayed and he got better. So Jesus must have done it. Okay, there's another thing that Richard Carrier said that I liked a lot about, these cherry picking claims that you prayed and then it seemed a miracle happened. Somebody got better or whatever. Now, what Richard Carrier says, imagine that you've got a 1 in a million event or something. The odds of something happening is 1,000,000 to 1 against. And he said that in America, there are 300 million people. It means that on average in a year, I don't know how exactly you work this out, but let's say it's over a year, you're going to get at least 300 of these highly improbable events happening. And that for each of those 300, let's supposing that 200 of them are Christians. Let's say that 200 prayed and then something happened which seemed to be connected with the prayer. You'll have 200 people going around telling that story and convincing others, when in reality, we don't know how many millions prayed and nothing happened at all. Okay, so it's the law of, as he said, statistics and big numbers, that some of these improbable things will happen. I think that he was also his wrong evidence. He was talking about wrong evidence. Yeah, this is some of the wrong evidence he's talking about. These healing stories and miracle claims and other things like that just don't stack up. And then the other one, which really interested me, was his wrong universe. Yeah. So I think that's a really good one. We live in the wrong universe for there to be a God. The universe that we live in seems to be consistent with there being no God. And he gave reasons for this. One is virtually all of the universe is hostile to life. Yeah. So this thing about about fine tuning, it doesn't really stack up. He said that uh, in a universe which is sufficiently large, with, I don't know, thousands or millions of galaxies, billions maybe of star system or solar systems, planetary systems, heliocentric systems, that you would need a universe that large for a highly improbable event like abiogenesis and life to happen. And we seem to have a universe that large. In a God universe, the point is, because God can create life, in a God universe, we wouldn't need billions of galaxies. It wouldn't be necessary to have billions of galaxies. It would only be necessary, in fact, to have well, not really much at all. I mean, God equates to magic, right? There would be no need for anything more than a sun. And I mean, why would we need the other planets even? We would really just need a sun and an earth and maybe a moon. We wouldn't need anything else. Why would we need billions of stars, galaxies, etc.? Why would the universe need to be as big as it is? It wouldn't be necessary. And the way that human beings and the way that life has evolved in this kind of cumbersome evolutionary process that has resulted in, admittedly, faulty beings, that we can get ill. We are so fragile. We can die so easily. That wouldn't be necessary either. The complexity of the eye wouldn't be necessary if we had a grand magician like a god. We would all just simply be made, the eye would be like a glass ball or something. It would just by magic all work. All this, all this complexity wouldn't be necessary. All this vast space, all the billions of planets and stars, they wouldn't be necessary either. The reason they're necessary um, is that life is incredibly rare and is so incredibly improbable. Fortunately, because the universe is so large, hence we exist. Life started. Incredibly improbable, and it may well be that in the entire universe, it only happened once. I've got a kind of sneaking suspicion that it did only happen once, and I sometimes sort of amuse myself with the thought that there are actually no aliens out there. There's not even microbial alien life out there, and that this highly improbable event has only happened once in the entire universe, and there are not even microbes out there. We're actually all alone. That kind of amuses me when I think about all those people with telescopes and I don't know, radio telescopes and listening for signs of life and everything. However, it will be incredibly exciting if we go to, oh, what's that moon on Jupiter, or is it Saturn? Is it Titan or Europa? Or they think that maybe they might find there's a moon out there with water on it. I think it's Europa, isn't it? They're hoping to find some evidence of microbial life in the water. That would be really exciting. But I've got a sort of sneaking suspicion they probably won't find that. Okay, so yeah, I thought Carrier was quite sound in what he said. Let's have a look at your comments. Yeah, divine hiddenness, Jim. That's the problem. Yeah, I mean, it's like Richard Carrier said. Why? What would be the big deal? Oh yeah, sorry, just coming back. Sorry, it's coming back in my memory. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, what I liked about what Carrier said about yeah, some of the explanations that religion has never provided a good explanation for anything, and that if we're talking about nature versus religion, it's like nature is winning by like 1 million goals to zero. that religion hasn't got anything right about nature, and science has got everything right. It's gradually answering all the questions that religion tried to answer. So, yeah, we thought thunderbolts came from angry gods, uh, lightning and all the sort of natural phenomena we explained in sort of divine terms. But one by one, science proved all of those wrong, and that religion has at the moment got zero in its credit, and science has got like a million goals, has been providing all the answers, and you would back the winning side. And at the moment, the winning side seems to be science and not religion. Yep, absolutely. Okay, now there's one last thing. Thank goodness I remembered, because in my title, I'm leaving this to the end. A Christian recently said to me, maybe it's all made up. Let me just explain the circumstances. As a lot of you know, I've been dating a Christian woman now for over a year. Um, she's Austrian, and she grew up a Catholic. So she goes to church every week, and I go with her. Yeah, I've learned a lot about how Christians worship and the Christian mindset. It's been quite useful. I've made various comments on my channel. She's a little bit odd in the sense that she's also into shamanism. She's into nature spirits and all that kind of thing. And she goes to groups where they bang drums and they hold um, staffs, they hold on to them, and they do various things, and they try to connect with the great spirit and nature, all that kind of thing. And I've been to one or two. I went to two of those, and after that, I said to my girlfriend, when she said, "Oh, you're coming along to the next shaman group," I said, "Actually, no." I said, it's good for you, and I think you should go because it gives you a real boost. But no, I said, I don't really enjoy it, and I even find it a bit stressful. She said, "What do you find stressful about it?" And I said, "Well, I don't like the journeying part of it, and I don't like giving feedback on journeying. I don't know if any of you guys know, but what these shamans do, they get around in a circle, and what do? They they sort of close their eyes, and they imagine that they're sort of journeying, and they pick an animal, like, I don't know, it could be an owl, it could be a wolf, and this wolf is going to sort of lead them through nature, and it's going to lead them to a place where they can resolve certain issues. And this is all supposed to sort of come about spontaneously in your imagination. And then at the end of it all, you're supposed to feed back to the group or write down what you've experienced, etc. Now, when I did it, quite frankly, if I hadn't invented everything, I wouldn't have been able to feedback nothing. Wouldn't have been able to feedback anything, because when I closed my eyes, I didn't imagine any. I mean, nothing was coming into my mind. Absolutely zilch. I thought, oh God, I can't feedback nothing. So I made up a lot of stuff, and then I was able to feedback all sorts of stuff. But I found that a lot of hard work, and I did it twice, but I didn't want to do it a third time. So I said, no, that's it. Not going to any more shaman groups. I'll be happy to come to church with you, because it's just an hour sitting there singing some hymns, um, looking around at people when they're praying, listening to the sermon. The readings, actually, believe it or not, I actually find interesting, because I'm sort of interested in the Bible as a document. And I'm not one of these atheists who says, "Oh, we've got nothing to learn from the Bible. It's a lot of rubbish." I'm not somebody who says that. I think the Bible is a remarkable document and is worth knowing. So when somebody comes up and they read out their favorite reading from the Old Testament and the New Testament, I'm there listening. I'm interested in what they found significant about it, and usually the sermon is built around it. So I find the sermon quite interesting, and I tend to internalize and remember what the sermon was about in relation to those readings, and it helps me with my understanding of the Bible, at least through a Christian viewpoint. And then I've got my own take on it. So, I kind of find it interesting. But yeah, coming back to my partner, this lovely lady from Austria who I've been seeing for a year. So yeah, um, when we drove to church on Sunday, we were getting out of the car, and there were autumn leaves everywhere, beautiful colors. Love the beautiful autumn colors, golden leaves, red leaves, and everything. And she looked at it all and she said, Stuart, I like to think that there are spirits in all these trees and nature and animals and everything. It sort of makes me feel good to think about things that way, and that I can somehow connect with it all and draw energy from it. But she said, really, it's just all made up, isn't it? And I didn't say anything to her about that. I didn't comment at all, because when she said, isn't it, that was like a rhetorical question. She was thinking out loud. And I don't I don't encourage skepticism in her. She knows that I'm a skeptic. She knows that I'm not a believer, but I don't really talk about that. She knows it. She knows how I see things, and she's starting to say things now that she wasn't saying a year ago. I mean, I think a year ago she was talking about these things as if they were actually true. Now she's thinking, well, they make her feel good, but it's probably just make believe, and there's no real reality to it. But I'm not going to be the one to undermine her beliefs. She can reach that position herself. Already with Christianity, she's saying to me, she enjoys the hymns, she enjoys this and that. She says that she can be doing without all this Jesus stuff. And she's already kind of, I mean, she enjoys the community, and I kind of enjoy the community too. Nice people and everything, even if I disagree with their beliefs. So she's looking more and more like a secular Christian every day. Okay, well, that's about it, really. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you've got any questions you want to put to me, I'll be here this time next week. Oh, wait a minute, or will I? No, maybe not, because um, I mentioned that my father's wife died. Not my mother, my stepmother. They were married since 1981. How many years is that? 43 years. Yeah, she died. She died. She had a 3-year battle with cancer. 3-year battle with cancer. She died in great pain, and she died very courageously, from what I understand. No complaints. And she was never really my favorite person, but I admire the fact that she faced death with a lot of courage, and she died an atheist. Okay, because she had been a believer. She did not recant on her deathbed. But the point is that, as I mentioned before in a previous video, I went down to see my dad for a week, and he was in a wretched state when I arrived. An absolutely wretched state. It took him 5 minutes to get off the sofa, and I mean, he was hardly wearing anything. I had to pick him up off the floor because he kept falling over. He's improved. I spent a week with him. He's improved by all accounts, and I'm going down again on Thursday to spend another week with him to see how he is. And consequently, it's possible I may not be doing a live stream on Monday, but if there's any possibility, I might be able to do it. I'll try and squeeze it in. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again maybe next week, if not the week after. Bye for now.